Hello YouTube, and welcome to the DBTGamer show, episode 209. Well, it's Halloween again, and this year I'm going to review another Resident Evil game because A, it's Halloween, and because B, I've been playing a lot of Resident Evil lately, and I'm kind of in the mood for it. Also, this year for Halloween, as a special treat to my subscribers, I dressed up as a somewhat unappreciated Resident Evil character, Lieutenant Billy Cullen. I hope you like my costume, and I hope you enjoy this review. Today's review will be a somewhat forgotten Resident Evil game. Resident Evil Gaiden for the Game Boy Color. This is one of those games that I am quite undecided on. Do I like it? Do I hate it? I'm hoping to try and make that more clear in my review. Over the years, Capcom has done some crazy things when it comes to trying to get Resident Evil onto a portable console. Their first attempt was actually running the original Resident Evil for the PlayStation on a Game Boy Color. Let's look at some of these screenshots of the Resident Evil prototype for the Game Boy Color. The first screenshot this is of Chris Redfield's story, where you find the first zombie. Now, from what I can tell, the game looks alright. Now, in terms of controls, D-pad would move you, and then I think you held A to aim your gun, then you press B to blast away, and start was menu, and select was map. Next picture. This is a picture of Jill Valentine's story. From what I can tell, this is in the laboratory, towards the end of the game. Overall, looks pretty good, in terms of what a Game Boy Color can do, and it's impressive how they got both Chris's story and Jill's story onto a Game Boy Color cartridge, or at least attempted to. And now onto one of my favourite scenes in the Resident Evil game, but in Game Boy Color form. This is the famous Master of Unlocking scene, and this is what would pass as a cutscene on Resident Evil for the Game Boy Color. As you can see, it's text-based. Basically, the Resident Evil for the Game Boy Color had absolutely no voice acting at all, apart from the beginning of the game where it said Resident Evil in sort of a 8-bit sort of voice capture sort of thing. So if you were going to watch a cutscene on Resident Evil on the Game Boy Color, it would be text-based, and that's pretty much it. Considering the hardware, it's not a bad way of doing it, I suppose. Our next picture is the Resident Evil Gaiden American box art. Now, you may have noticed something about this box art if you have done a lot of research on Resident Evil 2. This is beta art from Resident Evil 1.5. In Resident Evil 1.5, there was going to be body armor and the ability to damage clothing. And somehow, this piece of artwork got into the Resident Evil Gaiden box art for America. To be brutally honest, it's impressive that they even got this to work in the first place. But from the gameplay that I've seen, yes, there is gameplay of this. There's even a ROM out there that you can play, and a few people have made hacked cartridges so you can almost play the thing to completion. Almost being the operative word. It's an interesting port and experiment, but it looks rather clunky to play. Anyway, let's not delay this review any longer. Let's take a look at Capcom's first and official portable Resident Evil game, Resident Evil Gaiden. So, grab your rocket launcher and let's go hunt some zombies. The story of Resident Evil Gaiden starts out simple but gets more complicated, and also I must mention that this story is considered non-canon because of things that happen in later Resident Evil games. Anyway, off we go with the story. The entire game is set on this huge boat called the Starlight, and at the beginning of the game you see a cutscene, and Leon Kennedy has been sent to the Starlight to investigate a zombie outbreak. The entire ship has been taken over by a zombie virus, and the crew and the passengers have all been turned into zombies. So you've got a giant boat filled with zombies. Great. Leon finds a small girl called Lucia and does his best to protect her. But then he discovers a tyrant-like monster who's about 7 foot tall and is very difficult to take down. And eventually, the bioprotection team, which Leon is part of, they lose contact with Leon, and he hasn't radioed the base in days. So, the team does what any good team would do. They send in the most badass Resident Evil character ever, Mr. Badass Barry Burton. Mr. Badass Barry Burton suits up and takes a chopper to the Starlight and lands on the Starlight and begins his search for Leon and any other survivors. And that's your basic story. Eventually, you do find Leon and you can team up and swap between characters in the battle mode, which I will get onto later, because the battle mode is a rather unique thing in this game. And also, throughout the game, you will change characters at certain points in the story, which is rather good. So overall, I thought the story was good. There's even a plot twist at the end of the game, which you really don't see coming. It involves the tyrant's abilities to, shapeshift. But I'm not going to say any more than that because it will spoil the surprise, and it also explains why this game is non-canon. Next, let's go on to the graphics of this game. The graphics for Resident Evil Gaiden, as far as the Game Boy Color is concerned, they're very impressive. When I first played this, I bought it off Adam, and I thought, for the Game Boy Color, this is very impressive. You know, it's a top-down Resident Evil game, the ship is very well detailed, it looks very, very broken apart and trashed, there's zombies everywhere, and all the sprites are nicely, highly detailed, and it's quite easy to tell what everything is, and all that good stuff. So, overall, the graphics are really good. But, there's one thing that bothers me. I did some research on this game. It was launched in very late 2001, which means the Game Boy Advance was available. So, I'm not entirely sure why Capcom decided to use the Game Boy Color over the Game Boy Advance. In terms of decisions, it feels like a very missed opportunity. This game could have been better if it was on the Game Boy Advance, because they could have used the Game Boy Advance's higher capabilities, and obviously could have just been a better experience. I'm just stunned why they went with the Game Boy Color over the Game Boy Advance. My only guess in terms of why they did this was development costs. Maybe the Game Boy Advance was expensive to develop for, but I seriously doubt it, since it was basically a supercharged portable Super Nintendo. Next, let's get onto controls. The controls for Resident Evil Gaiden are good, but you do need to take some time to adjust yourself and get the hang of them. One of my main issues with the controls was I kept going into the wrong menu. Really, an issue with the control, it's basically me forgetting which button is which. A button, it searches things, so you can just actually pick up stuff and find things. So A button is confirm, B button is to cancel, start button is menu, select button is map, and the D-pad moves your character in 8 directions, although it can feel a little bit stiff sometimes when it comes to getting out the way of zombies and the relentless tyrant. And when you're panicking, sometimes you may press the map button rather than the start button, which can be a little bit frustrating. But overall, I thought the controls were good once you get used to them. Next, let's go on to the music for the game. The music for the game is also really good. I was also impressed by this. It's got this creepy sort of eerie sort of feel to it. I just really liked it. And the battle music is also really catchy and can be quite intense when you're fighting certain monsters, so music is good. Next, let's go to the gameplay for this game. The gameplay for the game, it's a survival horror game with an action sort of battle system. It's your standard classic Resident Evil game in sort of like a 2.5D top-down isometric perspective. And most of the time the gameplay is good, but time to address the elephant in the room. Okay, the battle system in Resident Evil Gaiden works as follows. On your screen, you'll see the monsters. They'll probably be zombies or the tyrant. Basically, there's a bar on the screen, and there's like a little cursor which goes from left to right at various speeds. I'll come back to the whole various speed thing later because it's very important and also rather annoying. And for each monster, you'll see like a red area, and also a center point of that red area. Now, depending on where you land the cursor when you press the A button, it'll dictate how much damage you do to said monster. So let's say you're fighting one monster and you land the cursor in the red area, it will do damage. Pretty simple. And depending on which weapon you use, it'll do either greater or less damage. Now, if you manage to land the cursor in the middle, you get a critical hit and it does a lot of damage to enemy, and sometimes can just one-shot them, depending on which weapon you use. I see what M4 were trying to do with this battle system. This battle system, at times, can make the game rather intense, and it keeps the game from being too easy. So for those reasons, I understand what I was trying to do, and at certain points it can be good. But at the later points in the game, this can be a pain in the arse. If you are using a weapon like a knife, or a handgun, or a shotgun, the cursor speed will be manageable. But when you get to the bigger weapons like the grenade launcher, the gas launcher, the rocket launcher, and the machine gun, the bar moves faster and it's almost impossible to deal with, and it also relies on quite a lot of luck and just getting the bloody timing right. I'm just hoping, for God's sake, you do not miss with that rocket launcher when you're fighting the bloody tyrant. And you may have to reload saves until you get it right, until you fight the enemies in the way that you want to fight them, rather than wasting your ammo just because you managed to somehow miss them several times because you couldn't get the timing down on this battle system. Overall, what do I think of the battle system? It's okay, but at times it can get frustrating. Overall, the gameplay for Resident Evil Gaiden, let's say it's in between okay and good. My main complaint with the gameplay is the battle system. I just wish they'd have worked out something better. Anyway, on to the Ghostface game. The Ghostface game, I like the story. It's non-canon, but it has a certain charm to it, and it has some interesting twists and turns you don't see coming. And it's rather good. Another thing I like about the game were the graphics. They were very impressive for the Game Boy Color. Another thing that really impressed me about the graphics were the cutscenes. Yes, this game actually has cutscenes. No, it does not have fully voiced cutscenes like Metal Gear. That is way too intense for the Game Boy Color to do. But in terms of still images and text, the cutscenes do a very good job of telling the story, and yeah, it's good. Another game is the music. It's very creepy, it fits the mood well. And one of my favourite things about this game is the fact that you get to play as Barry Burton. Barry Burton is one of my most favourite Resident Evil characters of all time, and he doesn't get much love in the Resident Evil universe. He very rarely is playable, so the fact that he is playable in this game is just a delight, and it just feels good to actually play as him and actually have this big, beefy, rugged man who can literally take on anything. So yeah, I was really happy to see Barry Burton. Also, I was happy to see Leon as well. He's one of my favourite characters in the Resident Evil universe. And the other thing to look at the game is the PDA. If you go into the weapons menu, you'll see that it's a little computer screen. If you click on that, you can radio the chopper and they'll tell you where next to go in the game, which is really helpful. Although I do recommend that you have a guide next to you when you play this game, because even with the PDA and the map, you're probably going to need some help at certain points, or you might get lost, or you might get overwhelmed by the countless zombies. And the other thing that I really liked was the map in the game. It's really well designed, and at certain points in the game, certain rooms will be highlighted in red, so that you know that you need to go back there in order to accomplish a certain thing in the game. So, very helpful. And the other thing that I liked about the game was the wide variety of weapons that you get to take down the zombies in the game. You get a knife, a handgun, a shotgun, machine gun, rocket launcher, gas boss, and grenade launcher. So it's a nice selection of weapons, and there's more than enough here to do what you need to get done. Another thing I really liked about this game was the fact that it has body armor, and this is one thing that's never been included in any other Resident Evil games, as far as I know. Okay, I think there was some battle damage sort of thing in Resident Evil 1.5, which was the beta for Resident Evil 2, but I've never seen any body armor in any other Resident Evil game, and the body armor is really useful. It helps you survive hits from zombies, and you can get multiple types and multiple sets for each character, so it's definitely well worth finding. It's just really, really useful. Another thing I like about this game is the exclamation mark mechanic. Throughout the game, when you walk into a room, in your bottom left hand corner of your screen, you'll see like a little exclamation mark pop up in either green or red. If it's red, it means that there's a zombie nearby which holds an item that you can get off it if you manage to kill it. And if it's green, it means that there's an item next to your foot and you should probably press the A button to pick it up. Without this game probably wouldn't work and it would make the game really difficult. So I am glad that the game developers made this really good mechanic. Well done, guys. Now on to one of my favourite things about the Resident Evil games, the enemies. In this game there are only two types of enemies. You've got the zombies, and you have the tyrant. Now you may be thinking, well, that's a little bit boring. Considering the wide variety of enemies in the Resident Evil universe, you'd think they would have more enemy types. Well, the zombies actually make up for that. The zombies in this game are very diverse. You have your standard zombies, which are just your standard zombies, which don't really cause that much trouble. Most time you can take them down with a knife or a handgun. Then you have the female zombies, which most of the time dress in like a blue sort of dress. And if these things bite you, there's quite a high chance that they can poison you. And if you get poisoned, you are pretty much screwed. Depending on how much health you have, your health bar will deplete constantly, kind of like it does in Pokemon, and eventually the poison will wear off. I think you lose about 1 bar, or sometimes 1.5 in dire situations, I suppose, depending on how much damage the poison does to you. It's kind of random. So yeah, the poisonous female zombies can be rather dangerous. Take those out as quickly as possible and don't let them attack you, because otherwise you're screwed. And the final type of zombies are the weapon-wielding zombies. Yeah, there's actually zombies that are holding like axes, and when they hit you, they'll do a lot more damage than the regular zombies, and they can be a pain in groups, and they deal quite a bit of damage. Next, let's get on to the Tyrant. The Tyrant in this game is relentless, and that's one of my favourite things about it. It appears multiple times in the game, and it never lets up. When you first fight it, it's about 7 foot tall, and it punches you and can easily kill you if you're not careful. But just take out your shotgun and blast it to smithereens, and you should be fine. Later in the game, the Tyrant will actually start stalking you, and it may pop up throughout the ship, and you have two options at this point. You can either fight it and waste precious ammo, or number 2, you can run, or you can get pummeled to death. Another thing I liked about the Tyrant was it has multiple transformations and forms. Its first form is just the standard giant naked beast man thing that ruins your day. Its second form, on the other hand, is a lot more deadly. It has these tentacles which come out of its chest which can grab you and force you to fight it, which can make this thing rather dangerous. And then, in the later parts of the game, you have its third form, where it has like these spikes on its shoulder, and it has like this huge mouth on its abdomen and sort of halfway up its chest area, and also the tentacles, so it tries to grab you and eats you with its chest, abdomen, mouth. And it's, when you look at the sprite work when you fight this thing in the battle mode, it is quite horrific and quite threatening. Now, as for the Tyrant, its first form, it looks like a very depressed 7 foot tall man. It's kind of funny in the way they drew it. But yeah, overall I liked the encounters with the Tyrant, and there were times when the Tyrant seemed almost impossible to beat. Most of the time you just have to fill it full of lead, but there are certain parts of the game where you have to literally blast it enough times so the Tyrant gets knocked further away, and then you win the fight. Which confused me because I just thought you had to just fill it full of lead. And throughout the game there's also a variety of herbs which you can find. Certain herbs will heal you of certain things. There's blue herbs for poison, green herbs will heal you of 1 bar, then you got your yellow herbs which do 2 bars of health, and red herb which does 3 bars of health. There's also like a purple one which does everything as well as poison. Pretty standard stuff for Resident Evil game. Now on to my complaints. That's all the footage I am going to show of the game. Now on to my complaints for Resident Evil Gaiden. Complaint number 1. I highly recommend, if you're going to play this game, that you use a guide. One of my main criticisms of this game is it's not really that friendly to less experienced Resident Evil players. You can easily get lost and you can quite easily make mistakes, and it's just not a very friendly game. So a guide is highly recommended, even with the map and the PDA thing helping you out. My second complaint is the battle system. Even though the battle system makes the game intense and it keeps the combat interesting, I still wish that M4 could have thought of something else besides the little cursor going up and down the bar, basically making the game into one giant QuickTime event. And it can be rather frustrating sometimes depending on which weapon you are using, and there are times where it literally just comes down to luck or rhythm, and not everybody has rhythm, so it can feel unfair. Examples of ways the battle system could be made better: maybe it could have been like an RPG and each weapon did a certain amount of damage to the zombies. Just a thought. On to my third complaint. Certain items you cannot get until you get to a certain point in the game. Now, what do I mean by this? It is possible to sequence break Resident Evil Gaiden and go to certain rooms out of order, if you know where you're going and if you know where all the keys are. But if you want to go get a certain weapon early on and you know how to sequence break the game, until you hit certain story points, you can't always get said weapon, which is kind of annoying, because if you walk into a room and you search a box and you expect a weapon to be there, and then when you search this box, the weapon's not there, and then when you come back to the exact same box later in the story, you search the same box again and out pops a shotgun. It's just weird. I mean, how did the weapon get there in the first place? You know, did a zombie drop it out of its trousers after you were gone and then you can get said shotgun? It's just so weird, and it can be a little bit frustrating. And my fourth and final complaint, and I mentioned this in the review as well, I think that Capcom would have been able to create a much better game if they'd have just used the Game Boy Advance instead of using the Game Boy Color. Yes, the Game Boy Color is an impressive machine in its own right, and my only guess is the reason why they used it was to cheapen development costs. But from what I can remember, at the time, Capcom had plenty of money with all the hit Resident Evil games that they had. So they could have shelled out the extra cash and developed Resident Evil Gaiden for the Game Boy Advance and made a game with much better visuals, probably a much better combat system, and just a much better game all around. And the Game Boy Advance was out before Resident Evil Gaiden was finished, so they could have easily delayed it a little bit and then done like a Game Boy Advance sort of game and had a better overall game, I think. Anyway, let's cap this review off. My final rating for Resident Evil Gaiden. Overall, I think this is a mediocre Resident Evil game. It's not bad, it's not great, it's just okay to good. You know, it's somewhere in between. And I think there are aspects that you can enjoy, and there are also aspects that may drive you bonkers, that may frustrate you. So I think this game is mediocre. So I don't do this very often, but I'm going to give Resident Evil Gaiden 2.5 stars out of 5. And that is the end of my Halloween special. Happy Halloween. If you see any zombies, grab your rocket launcher and give them what for. It's the best way to get rid of them, especially with unlimited ammo. See you guys next time. Bye.